and welcome to the latest podcast from Bytes Software Services. My name is Maria Singleton. I'm head of proposition for our software optimization services. And today I am joined by Rick Sterling and Roger Leyland. Welcome, both of you. And maybe if you want to give a bit of an introduction about yourselves, Rick, if you can go first.
No problem. Yeah, my name's Rick Sterling, and thanks very much for enjoying us today. I've been in our industry, as you probably know, for about 20 years now. Always worked at vendors, but I've been at Certero for the last 8 years and continue to love, and especially more recently, the development of ITAM, SAM, SaaS, and cloud. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic. Roger?
Roger Leyland, Services Director at Certero. I've been there a year. My background's managed service providers, so I've worked at several over the years. I'm looking forward to the conversation today as well.
Perfect. I guess to kind of kick things off, Bytes has a strategic relationship with Certero. That is founded on a kind of long-standing relationship that we've had with you. But in addition to that, we recognise the fact that from a Gartner perspective, you've in terms of the Gartner Insights, you're there in terms of SAM solution of choice, and also in terms of the FinOps Foundation recognised tools. And actually, from a Bytes perspective, we work with you to allow our customers flexibility and choice around tool sets that they might want to purchase to address specific outcomes that they've got. And I guess in terms of the service offering as well, it expands our ability to provide services to customers. Strategic partner with Bytes. I don't know if there's anything else that you guys want to expand on in terms of the relationships that you have with Bytes.
No, I mean, from our point of view, we've always transacted and done a lot of business with yourselves and spoken to for many years, and I think we stepped that up, didn't we, over just a couple of years ago now, into that strategic relationship. And I think it was a good opportunity for us both, really, because yourselves looking to diversify, like you say, offer those opportunities to your customers to provide more diverse services across the range of ITAM, SAM, and now we'll talk about FinOps today. And likewise, from our perspective as well, we were looking to strategically grow into areas naturally across where you're into, but obviously we've got businesses in the US where I know that you're working towards and growing a presence there, and also in Asia Pacific. So it made great sense, I think, to all of us, and it's been really good so far, and long may it continue.
Fantastic. So then moving on, in terms of Certero as an organisation. I mean, you've mentioned US presence. I think what's interesting from our perspective as well is the diversity of product stacks that you have. We obviously are going to then be talking about the FinOps scenario here, but I guess from your perspective, what are you seeing as market trends? How is Certero reacting to those market trends and developing and diversifying?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually, and I know that Roger's going to talk a lot around the FinOps side of things in a little bit as well. But just more generally, I think we've been around for 18 years. We started life as an ITAM provider, when things were all about hardware and managing devices and infrastructure. And obviously, as the consumption of software has happened and businesses adopted software, that's always been a challenge, and software asset management became a challenge and a problem. And then naturally into SaaS and into cloud. But I think, really there's some core principles that we've adopted. They're right deep down in our DNA. It's what we stand for. And when we create solutions and we create products, these core principles are really at the heart of everything that we do. And we break those off into sort of two key areas. One of them is visibility, and the other one is observability. And sometimes these can get a little bit confused, but just to sort of break it into a bit of an analogy, I mean, we've all been to an airport, it's all summertime, but I view these things as, if you're at your airport and you're looking at your runway, you can provide, got visibility of planes that are on there. But actually, when you're in the control tower and you can see what these planes are doing, where are they going to, what flights they can go to, fuel load, people that are on them, that's the observability that's in them. And, I think from our perspective, there are a lot of solutions out there that offer great observability. But I think visibility has been paramount to us to make sure that we can see everything across of everywhere, across of all of our solutions. Perhaps we'll talk about that in a little bit as well, but that's at the very, very core, with regardless whether it's around a ITAM, SAM, SaaS or cloud.
Perfect, great stuff. And then that kind of leads us perfectly on to kind of the FinOps conversation. But I guess just finishing off that conversation about what's at the core of kind of your go-to-market, your conversations you have with clients. How are you seeing that change in terms of FinOps being this buzzword? Means different things to different organisations. How is that translating to the conversations that you're having with customers?
Yeah, so if you look across those 4 pillars that Rick just mentioned, so ITAM, SAM, Cloud and SaaS, FinOps is part of that conversation. It's coming through because the same problems and pressures are still there, so cost control, etc. But when you look at SaaS in particular, SaaS is just exploding from a cost point of view, and the number of SaaS apps everyone's using, all this sort of stuff. And it comes back to that keyword that Rick just mentioned, which is visibility. So I think the latest stat is only 35% of organisations have visibility, or a good visibility of their environments to control those costs. So when we're having those conversations, it's that pressure and it's the complexity. It doesn't, it's got harder. It's not easier. You've got data centers still. You've still got all the BYOD stuff that we had a few years ago. Still got all of that going on. Then you've got the SaaS explosion, and then you've got the complexity of the cloud consumption model versus, if you're in an hybrid, and then you've got multi-cloud. So when we're talking to,
So it's complex.
yeah. So when we're talking to customers, that visibility, and then what does it all mean? That it's just more complex, and people just need more help around that. So when we're seeing that, that's kind of the start of the conversation, because they're coming because cost controls out. That's the challenge, and then they still have all the same challenges that you have with governance and control. You've still got all the challenges around resources and people. So finding people with the right skills. So whether it's the services, through Bytes or ourselves or whatever, or what features the tools can do. So it's those challenges, and it's just getting more complex, and that's where they're needing help. Around that complexity, the phrase has been around a while, which is shadow IT.
I was about to say shadow IT. So how does that relate to SaaS?
Yeah, so shadow IT was kind of born out of the idea of bringing your own device. When iPhones became a thing, and then everyone was sort of starting to use their own apps on their own device, all that sort of stuff. Where it's exploded in SaaS is it's incredibly easy now to spin up a SaaS environment, whether that's buying a bit of software or a SaaS platform. So at an individual level, at a department level, and at an IT central point, it's just so easy to get that going, but incredibly hard then to switch it off and control it, because you don't know what you don't know. So back to the visibility being, if you're sat at the top of this stuff, and you don't know what people are doing, you've no chance of getting that control. And that element of shadow IT is just, again, adding to the complexity. And the explosion and the numbers and the data all back up. We all do it, right? It's just so, especially in AI, ChatGPT, these sort of examples are really easy to just start consuming, but no governance and compliance around it.
So, I was going to say as well to that, I was reading a point actually earlier today, and that 73% of SaaS applications that are consumed are actually purchased by the users themselves. Not by the business.
Yeah, we see a lot of that on credit cards, for instance. Yeah,
exactly.
And then that's letting risk into the business. Taking this back a step. So if everything's badged under that, and obviously this conversation we're having today, the podcast is about FinOps. In your view, how would you summarise what FinOps is, and what's the kind of varieties you're seeing in terms of conversations with customers?
Yeah. So if we look at FinOps, so if we look at the historical bit, there was DevOps. Everyone kind of got their head around DevOps. FinOps sort of evolved out of that, very focused on cloud and cloud spend. But where it's really exploded in the last year, really, is this idea of SaaS is part of that FinOps conversation now, and that's recognised at the FinOps Foundation level. So we have lots of FinOps people, so we have a lot of certifications at the business. So just to explain our background a little bit on that. So we've got we're one of the global leaders in certifications. We've got lots of people with all the different badges. You can go onto the FinOps site and check all that. I'm a FinOps professional, Rick's FinOps certified, and all that kind of good stuff. But where it's really accelerated in the last couple of years is two things. SaaS, so FinOps has extended the scope to include the software as a service as part of that framework. but also AI. So when you look at AI, that's obviously just exploded as well. And the same dilemmas that we had in cloud, which is, are you getting business value, who's controlling it, how's it governed, all the compliance, who's spending the money, these still apply to SaaS and AI and the data center. So from a FinOps point of view, they've extended the scope out, and that just naturally plays back to the four pillars that Rick mentioned earlier. So when we look at the world, it's this ITAM, SAM, SaaS and FinOps space, with FinOps being the cloud and the SaaS spend and everything else.
So why is it often quite a challenge to implement a FinOps strategy when we've got sort of certain competencies in our kind of client estate where they're quite mature in terms of ITAM and software asset management? Why does FinOps kind of sit as an outlier, and what was your kind of approach to customers when they're talking about having it kind of segmented?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I think that because we've had the benefit of speaking to a lot of our customers, and some of them are have been exploring using cloud resources and multi-cloud for a long time. Others are just on the initial journey, but some of the problems that they've got are just really core and typical that you'd expect to see. So a lot of the time, they are only looking at partial estate. So they might be taking resources and sources of data from a type of solution and then trying to plug it with something else and then trying to bring in information from another system and then merge it all together. That causes a lot of challenge across a business. And ultimately, we did an exercise with a really large customer who was using Azure and had a load of it that they were aware of, but they had a whole separate business unit on a separate continent who'd started to actually consume quite large amounts of Azure that they just had no visibility for. And that's because these disparate systems that they were using was just really difficult to be able to manage and maintain. So we see that as one of the core problems as well. And I think then, trying to make sure that businesses understand where they can, and this is down to education and really, making sure that you can maximize the opportunity, is where they can actually make those savings, because it is quite a moving target. Things are changing all the time. Strategies and businesses are trying to grow. And with that, you have to be constantly keeping your finger on the pulse. You have to understand what you're doing. And obviously that needs to filter down, because the people that make a lot of these changes are engineers or, people at a lower level, right, that perhaps don't really care too much about, the cost of these services. They're just trying to enable the business to actually be productive and do what they need to do. But at a higher level, the C-levels are obviously seeing the consequence costs of those things, and security is seeing the risk side of those things as well. And that's elevated at a different level as well. So it's about collaboration. It's about bringing organizations together. That's a big challenge, but it's the core foundation of FinOps. And we obviously, through our solutions and services and with yourselves as well, help to be able to bring all of that together, because all of it is a big challenge independently, but together you need to address everything.
Yeah, just if I may, I'll just add on to that. So just when you look at cloud on the latest numbers, I think it's 30% of all cloud spend's wasted still. So when you see the numbers the big mega vendors bring out, that's eye-watering sums of wasted money. Where optimization does occur, you can still hit 60% more, in the optimization space. Reduce run cost by 20% is not an unusual thing once you actually apply it. But I think if you go back a level, it's the re-education. And Rick mentioned it briefly, but it's this idea of personas and different people in the organization. So say, for example, if we look at procurement, you've got to move away. When you look at cloud, you've got to move away from, I'm buying a product, I've bought it for 12 months, I've bought it for 2 years, right, that's done, I'll move on to the next one. I know constant. What I've spent. Yeah, it's that you need that real-time data because of the variability.
Yep.
The fact someone can spin something up and bring it down within a time frame, and it's just happened, and no one can, it's that visibility, back to visibility, and then observability again as to why do we need that, and what's the impact of that.
And we see this a lot from a Bytes perspective as well, because obviously if you manage to nail the management of your cloud spend, the rewards can be quite significant. You talked about that 30% wastage, so understanding what can be reharvested is a real plus, and actually rather than what is one of the ways in which you can actually reduce your spend to a certain vendor if it's maybe
Yeah.
Microsoft.
And a real practical example is just if I use a virtual machine, most people know what a virtual machine is these days. If you only need it on for say 8 hours a day, because that's the working window that people are using it, and you can turn that machine off overnight and at weekends, just that one action alone will reduce your cost down by about 60%. So just from having it switched on when you need it, if that thing can do that, start multiplying that simple action of powering stuff on a schedule and then bringing it back up when it's actually needed. You wouldn't think about doing that traditionally in a data center because you just didn't need to
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Because all you're doing is saving electricity at that point.
Yes.
Whereas in the cloud, you're spending real money on and that's just a very simple example of where, you can do a lot more besides just switching stuff off. But
Yep.
it's a very simple example. And, on that metric, it's 60% just on that action, one action. And it's,
Yeah. Or having resources right-sized.
yeah,
is a big one.
Yeah, and right sizing's another big one. Yeah, so wasted, again, just by getting to the right size, the numbers start adding up quite dramatically, and that's quite a common. So the reason the right sizing is quite a common one is someone spins up because someone tells them what the minimum specification is, or actually I want to make sure it works well while I'm testing it, and then that just becomes the machine that everyone uses. But actually, in reality, it doesn't need to be that big. But no one ever gets around to just checking that out, and that's really where the tools and that observability bit kicking in, the visibility bit kicking in, having the tools to support you, because your tools are like with right sizing, they'll either do it automatically or guide you, guide you there.
Foundational level,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, and they're they're the 101s of this world, right? But just those actions alone can add up to huge numbers in organisations.
So what sort of engagement are you having with customers around FinOps?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because FinOps is merging into different areas now. So I think one of the perceptions that we've seen is that cloud is FinOps. And more when we speak to organizations, specifically if we break those things off into cloud and SaaS, we're often speaking to people that we traditionally spoke to, IT people, people that have done software asset management for a long time. And then cloud, there's often another group of people who are clearly, trying to support and manage that across other business as well. So I think from our point of view, trying to merge those worlds or trying to understand and help businesses to figure out, I guess, a path of being able to correlate those is important. And then we've also seen, and we were at FinOps X earlier on this year, actually, when we were launching Certero X, our FinOps platform. And it was interesting because it's clear that across there, there are so many different solutions that address all of these different products. Some of them look very tailored at SaaS. Some of them look into SaaS consumption. Some of them look into SaaS as in like, M365 and Adobe. Others that look into cloud talk about SaaS from, a consumption perspective as well as AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. And I suppose what we're seeing from customers is a bit of a confusion around actually what really is FinOps.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations that we're having, because they've got multiple different things and tools, you type in FinOps, you get a SaaS solution, you get a cloud solution, is it addressing one product or several? It's really just about helping them to understand, what FinOps is. And that ultimately it starts, like I say, with visibility, being able to see everything across everywhere. And from then there, obviously, we can educate them. A combination, obviously, like I say, of our solutions and your services and our services, that can really help them with that. So yeah, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'd just add to that as well. If you look at, because we obviously have a strong history in ITAM, a lot of people get confused between what I describe as a simple inventory. I can see. So if you looked at, say, Intune, you get a simple inventory of what that Intune product needs. Whereas if you move back to ITAM and look at ITAM as a fully fledged thing, there's a lot more goes on in that space. And I think, again, people have said, oh, we could do ITAM, but they're actually doing inventory. And, people like, like yourselves, Bytes and Certero can bring to the parties that next level of understanding about what true ITAM is versus, what, it's on that education piece.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one, because when you talk to customers, they'll say, "Oh, we do SAM," and you go, "Well, what do you mean by that?"
Great
and
example,
it's actually they've got quite expensive tool sets that they're just using for glorified inventory.
Yes.
But actually, what you need to do is have the right tools, have the right people, have the right processes, and that kind of mirrors although we have to obviously work in more of an agile way when we're talking about
Yeah.
FinOps, because it's a continuous monitoring activity.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you've got the processes right and the people aligned correctly as well.
Yeah, and that's where the experience kicks in. So yeah, inventory is just inventory, and
Yes.
back to visibility, where where this partnership, where it's coming back to that visibility. Really good visibility is key to it. So Sam's a great example. If you haven't got the coverage, your SAM report's useless, right?
Yes.
Because it just you're only reporting on, say, 20% of your estate, then you're only looking at 20% of your estate. It becomes a meaningless conversation, and obviously your ELP or whatever would just get left out of town. So it's been really strong in that visibility, and then understanding what actually that ITAM piece is actually about, followed by what you're trying to do with SAM, then flows into SaaS. So yeah, that's where people get caught out, is that.
I think we've seen a lot of that as well more recently, in that ITAM itself has also become a part of the conversation, and FinOps are talking about adopting ITAM into data center and AI, and they've already obviously got SaaS and cloud. So it's a big topic. And when we talk about before, and we talk about visibility and observability again, some of the challenges that we've seen customers having are that, if we use a scenario again of being at the airport, that they've got that observation tower, but it's just looking over one runway, and actually it's not actually seeing everything. And that's this partial element that we're seeing. So a lot of solutions that we see across the market that obviously adopt ITAM or software asset management, they're not really concerned too much around having visibility. And lots of customers for a long time have had to provide, like you say, output really with having a partial estate or plugging information in from different areas. That causes a lot of confusion and challenge as well. So I think because of the economic climate perhaps, and where we are in that people are trying to make savings and digitally transform their businesses and significantly grow and scale and do things better, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. It's forcing organizations to have to sort of centralize all of that information together. And it's been proven that it's really difficult to do that with lots of disparate systems, and that goes into SaaS and into cloud being all part of that challenge. But having that visibility across of everything, which I say is very sort of core to what we do, is important. So from an ITAM perspective, it's like you say, it's not just about desktops and server inventory. It's about switches, printers, routers. Once you open the door to managing all those, that's important. And again, into the discovery or into the visibility across of your cloud and your FinOps estate.
Well, did you mention that one earlier, where we had that customer recently, and they basically found a whole piece of infrastructure in Asia or somewhere, I forget where it was, that they just didn't realise they had.
We get this a lot, and it's having tool sets that can discover across networks is really quite key to that. So we see more prevalence of that.
Yeah, quite right. And I understand why people end up going on and using other solutions as well, because there's always going to be an element of an inventory solution in, for example, an ITSM system. And then you've got PTRG systems out there, and you've got lots of other things that can provide bits of information, but they're typically very focused on what they're trying to get for their application. Whereas being able to provide asset management or IT asset management across of your actual assets, that's our job. And that's what we need to be doing as a solution to make sure that you actually have all that visibility instead of plugging in partial elements.
And it's the life cycle piece as well. So it's having some historical context to where that asset's been and what it's been used for, and where's it going to, who actually owns it now, but who's owned it in the past, what applications have been installed in it, what's been uninstalled. And it's having that life cycle side of it, whereas most inventory items, exactly what Rick's just said, are for the point in time to do, remote onto the device or monitor that device in the here and now. Is it running fast now? Is it running, and that's where the experience, and engaging with a Bytes or a Certero really kicks in.
So risking another airport analogy here.
You like that one?
I was thinking about it, you see.
It's my fault. I told him it was a good analogy.
What's on the runway then? So we briefly talked about AI. And I know obviously sustainability is a big one with our clients as well, and you've talked about asset lifecycle as well. Where does Certero going with all of that? What's high on the agenda, and what do you see coming downstream?
So you've touched on the two hot topics, which is AI and green, isn't it? So if we look at AI, there's two angles to that. So certainly from a FinOps perspective, so we talk about FinOps for AI, and then we talk about AI for FinOps. So two completely different things. Just muddle the words around. And certainly from our side, FinOps for AI, controlling and visibility of that spend is absolutely a hot topic. I mean, the spend on AI is, it's another level, isn't it? Everyone is touching AI, which means everyone's spending money on AI, and it's back to the SaaS discussion of, it's spun up by users and everything else. So that's clearly going to become a bigger and bigger issue as we go forward. And an interesting one on that, and we haven't really talked about it at the moment with FinOps, and is the business value. So it's actually a bill going up might be a good thing as long as the business is getting the value from that item. And AI is a really good example, because at the moment, are you getting, you might be spending millions of dollars now on AI, you probably don't even realize you're doing it, but are you actually getting business value from it? And that's a really hard thing to measure right now, because it's all so new to so many people. So I think that's going to be a thing over the next few years, which is actually you're consuming all this AI, but are you getting business value for it? If you are, where does that go? And understanding that in the broader context, which is then, so you get the visibility piece, but then the observability piece and the business value piece. I think that's where you're going to see the journey going, which is, right, what are we actually doing with this site? Is it actually adding anything incremental to the business, or is it a bit of fun, or is it glorified search or whatever? Depending what type of business you're in. So that's certainly one key area. And then carbon footprint, net zero, that's not going away. Well, depends where you are in the world, but right now it's a big thing in Europe, and that doesn't look like it'll change in the near future. So the idea of being able to report on your carbon footprint, or having some concept of your energy, and again, especially with AI, because that consumes a lot of energy, that's the thing. So we're already in that space, and we can do services via yourselves on that. But those are the two, outside of SaaS, obviously, and cost control and that, I would say those are the two big areas that are just, you can't move without a conversation on those.
Right, yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, we've been obviously deep rooted in sustainability for a long, long time. We've got solutions already that help organizations from, support and maintain carbon footprint and reduce costs, obviously, which is regurgitating, I suppose, at the moment, because of the challenges, I suppose, with energy costs and efficiency of those things. New targets have come in from the NHS, for example. So we've got solutions that help people with that today, but it obviously makes sense that, we're working really hard to make sure that all of that is a part of the cloud solution and the sustainability that we're obviously going to be helping companies with moving forward. So yeah.
I'm looking at Rick, the one key takeaway. So what do you want on GTM?
Visibility.
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 Yeah, visibility.
Spoken a lot about it, haven't we?
Yeah, visibility.
Okay. I would say, know where you're at is the key bit. And this is kind of a standard across, it's kind of best practice, I guess. How do you know where you're trying to get to if you don't know where you are currently? What are your gaps in the estate? And that always comes down to people, process, products within your environment. And those are huge areas where we can help, both from a tool set perspective and a services perspective as well.
Totally.
And that's where, from a Bytes perspective, we've been doing that. I mean, I've been in software asset management for over 25 years and at Bytes for longer, and that's what we're known for. But working with strategic partners like Certero, that gives us that trustworthy data to be able to allow customers to make informed decisions. So that's our key takeaway here for customers, is that we've got the expertise collectively to help them to get that visibility around their estate. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
No more flights out. I'm guessing you're on holiday soon.
That's
why the reference is always to holidays.
Yeah, it's a good analogy though.